Action.
We're rolling. Okay. Hello. No, we guessed I know.
Hello, Mark from cahep, Community Arts and Heritage Education Project. I am back once again with an art instruction video in conjunction with the Cookhouse. Cookhouse being an assisted living residence that every month we go in and we work with people there doing specific art projects, including this one. We do the art project, then we put together an instructional video, put that out on the interwebs, put together some art kits that go back to the Cookhouse so that people who weren't at the original session making that art get to access this instructional video on the interwebs and use that art kit and, you know, make some art. Yeah. We have a bunch of other instructional art videos on our channel, so please check those out, and there's going to be lots more to come. Particularly this week, what we are doing is photography with local photographer Heather Peden, so super excited about that. All right, what are you going to need? All right, this one does not need a lot of stuff. There's not a big art kit to give you for this one. What you're going to need is a camera of some sort, so like a phone or a tablet, whatever you have, or gadzooks, if you even have just a camera. Wow. Anything that can take photos. So that's the first thing. That's the main thing you're going to need. The other thing you're going to need for later on when we do a still life, just collect a couple of fun little items. They can be anything. I have this. This is like a posable thing for drawing to show you a figure. It's just kind of fun. You'll see that pop up later. Here's just a old ceramic thing that I had made years ago. I just grabbed that. And I grabbed a few other things. You really don't need much, like 4 or 5 things. Just gather them together. We'll use them later on. And that's it. That's all you're going to need. So, enough of my blabbing. Heather, take it away.
Hi, my name is Heather Peden. I'm a local photographer, and today we're going to talk a little bit about a few different elements of photography that hopefully you can use to explore photography on your own. So I've done a lot of different types of photography over the years. Right now, my favorite thing to focus on is nature photography. But today we're going to look at some different images and then explore something called still life photography. So I'm going to show you an example of what still life photography is. So this is an image of a window with a scale, and it was taken at a museum in an old flour mill. So I took the image because I thought it looked kind of interesting. I don't often do still life, but this sort of caught my eye, and we're going to talk a little bit more about still life in a bit because there's different ways to approach it, but I just wanted to give you an example to think about just now of what we're going to be doing a little bit later. Basically, I want to talk about 2 main elements of photography that, again, you can use across any genre that you're interested in. The first one is going to be light. So obviously you need light to take a picture so that your camera knows how to, can see it and can read what's happening in the scene. But there's different ways that you can use light, and we're going to talk about those just now. 3 things to keep in mind when you're dealing with light is what direction is the light coming from? What type of light is it? So is it natural light? Is it sunshine? Are you outdoors? Are you beside a window? Or is it artificial light? So a light bulb, essentially, or a combination. It can be a combination of those things. And the other thing to consider is the intensity of the light. So how bright is is the situation that you're dealing with. So all those things you can work with in different ways. So we're going to talk a little bit about that right now. So I'm going to show you another image. This one, if you want to think about how would you describe the lighting in this image, it is a sunrise at a lake. And so I was dealing with the sun being in front of me and trying to capture that image that I saw. So this is an example of backlighting. So the sun in this picture is in front of the camera, and the image I've focused on is between the light source and myself. So you get a silhouette of the grasses, and you get some detail in the dew and the grasses as well. So that's one way to look at lighting. Another image is the opposite, would be light that's basically right behind me. So it's behind the camera, completely lighting up the scene. So you can see a lot of details in the image. And so we're no longer looking at just shapes, but now you're seeing details on the tree, you're seeing the forest, and even the grass. And again, that's how because of the way the light is illuminating this image. It's kind of an example of more direct lighting. The next image is an example of more diffuse lighting. So again, it's daylight, it's a bright day, but it's overcast. So you have a very much softer casting of light. This kind of light is good for doing portraits or taking pictures of people because you don't get those harsh shadows. But again, this is obviously a picture of dogs, but it's the same idea. So you know, there's nothing that's there's no harsh shadows being cast. So you can see details. So another direction to consider is where if the lighting is coming from the side. So again, if it's harsher lighting, you'll get sharper shadows, and if you get more of a diffuse lighting, you're going to get fewer shadows, but it still is going to cause a different interest in the image. So this next image is lighting from the side. So you can see half of the image is a little brighter than the other half, but this also shows you how different materials reflect light differently. So that's another consideration when you're thinking about the intensity and direction of the light, is what you're shooting. So if it's something that's going to reflect the light a lot, you know, keep that in mind of where you would like that in your image, as well as, you know, if it's something that's going to absorb the light, so you get maybe a little bit more detail in color or texture. So those are just other considerations. Another example, this is just an image of, I wanted to show you some people because I mostly do not people, but here's some people. Again, harsh lighting. It was one of those days I had no control over the day or the time, so I had to deal with the light that I had. And this case, it was quite bright, kind of midday light, which you can still use. It doesn't, and people say it's not great light to work with, but you can work with any light. You just have to decide, you know, what you want to do with it. So I took this picture, and I wasn't super crazy about the way it came out. So I decided to move myself around the scene and find a different angle. So the angle I chose was putting the light a little bit in front of the camera. It's almost a backlighting type situation, and using that water that was spraying in the picture to reflect the light differently. So you get a completely different image, and it's the same person, the same day, the same time. It was just moving around to try a different angle. And that's kind of what we're going to be doing today with our still life, as well as learning how to move around and be comfortable with trying different angles and different ways of looking at what you're photographing. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about, we discussed light a little bit, and that's always going to be in your mind, hopefully, when you're taking a picture. The other thing we're going to talk about is composition. So composition is essentially choosing where you're going to put what you're photographing in the image, like how you're going to show it. So the example of the firefighters I showed you is an example of that. So you have, the shot of the two from the side is quite different from the second shot where I moved sort of behind the firefighter and took a slightly different image. So I've changed the composition, not only the way the light came through the image, but I also changed where I had chosen to put my subject and where that subject was looking and how the whole image came together. I'm going to show you a couple more pictures of some different things to just talk a little bit about the composition of them. Again, just so you can think about different ways of looking at the subject that you're working with. So the first image is a leaf on a log in the forest. So the leaf itself is the thing that I've focused on, but I didn't choose to put it right in the middle of the image. I put it off to the side a little bit, and I've included the forest floor as well, sort of in the background. So you're able to see where the image was taken. You can kind of get sort of a bigger picture from what I've chosen to show here. Another example, so this is a wheel of an old car, I believe from the 30s. So if you notice, it's actually made of wood, which I thought was very interesting, which is why I photographed it. But I didn't include a lot of the wood in the picture. So this one was, instead of having sort of a wider scene, I chose a very close-up scene and decided to focus on the metal part and the way the light was hitting it, and sort of have a suggestion of the spokes of the wheel coming out. So it's just a totally different idea, just again, of getting closer to the image instead of farther away. And another one would be using space as well. So this image, I chose to put the bird in the top kind of corner, sitting on the branch, and left a whole bunch of space around it. So again, I could have chosen to put the bird more in the center, maybe focus on the bird a bit more, but I've decided to kind of show a bigger scene and have the empty space. I think makes it kind of interesting. And I think, it's something you can think about when you're doing your own photography, when you're doing the still life, that you don't need to fill the entire, screen if you don't want to. You can work with space as well, because that creates sort of an interesting energy, I think, in an image, depending on what you're trying to show. The next image, flowers. We've got the daisies. They were growing in an interesting straight line. So I just, again, chose to shoot from directly above. So instead of beside or below, I've shot completely down so you can't see the stems. I didn't include the entire flowers in the whole picture. So it's like, the edges are cut off a little bit. One flower is in focus, the others are slightly out of focus, but you can still tell they're flowers. So again, it's just a different way of exploring a scene. And in this one, your eye kind of tracks up through the flowers and kind of back down, kind of keeps, in my mind, kind of keeps the eye looking at the image instead of falling out of the image, because it's, there isn't any movement in it. Another example of that same idea is this. It's sort of a larger scene, so it's a landscape, so you're seeing an entire picture. But again, using the lines of the canola field, it's, for me, that created an interest. Instead of just taking the canola field center and not including the edges of the field and just having the yellow, which could have been an interesting image as well. This is just looking at the lines and the way that they moved through the image is kind of what I found interesting in this one. And one more here is this daylily that, again, I've chosen to put it on the far left of the image and left space on the right hand side. So it's clearly the flower I'm clearly taking a picture of, but again, I've left some space around it. And I like the angle of this because you kind of get more detail on the petals than if you were to shoot it straight on. You don't see that the delicate edge. Depends on what you're trying to show. So I could have shot again straight on and it would have been a pretty picture, I think, because the flower's pretty, but I just thought this was a little bit more interesting from the side. So composition, again, it sort of encompasses quite a few different ideas. And one way that we can talk about composition that I've showed you here is with a concept called the rule of thirds. This is part of composition. I'm just going to show you quickly what I mean by that, and it might help you visualize an image differently. So the idea of the rule of thirds is taking an image and splitting it into 3 equal horizontal planes, or also 3 vertical planes. So you end up with basically, if you can imagine, nine squares in it that would cover the entire image. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Using that same image of the lily, I've put a grid pattern over the top. So this would be an example or an illustration of the rule of thirds. So if you can imagine some of the images we saw and picture the grid on top of that, you can see that often the focal point of the image is falling on one of the lines or even on one of the places where the lines meet. And that kind of just, again, it helps you kind of visualize a little bit of how you can move your image around and your subject around to get a different type of picture than one that you might initially think of. So I'll just show you a couple more examples. So this again, so landscapes are usually quite easy to see the rule of thirds at play because they are usually, horizontal planes. So this image, I have put the horizon near the top of the image, although there's a lot happening below that. Again, just so you can, again, see there's more than one thing at play, but keeping the rule of thirds sort of as a general guideline can help you maybe get a start of where you might want to place your subject. So this image is just a more extreme example, I would say, just with the sleeping giant. So I've had the giant, put him right at the very bottom of the image. I was trying to capture the clouds in this picture, so that's why I chose that to have so much sky, but it also kind of acts as like an anchor for the image and is really right down at the bottom. So for me, I think it just creates a lot of space and interesting movement with the clouds. And this image is, again, you can see that if you put the grid on top, focal point is on the far right, but the tractor is still, it's quite in focus throughout, mostly. You can see what it is. It's not trying to trick you at all, but it's definitely, it's giving you somewhere for your eye to go. It's not just center stage, and that's the image. This one is, you can see a few things at play. We've got the rule of thirds, so you can see the horizontal plane, but I've also chosen to put the dog on the right hand side, which is, again, using that grid. You can imagine, so the dog is, on the far right of the picture. And also, if we want to bring light back into this, the dog luckily was running into the light, so you could see the face and the way the picture kind of came together. So a lot of times it's sort of just circumstance works out well, and you can get the image that you're looking for. With the rule of thirds, this was an example I was going to show. So this is an image I chose to put the flower directly in the middle. And then I took the picture again, the same flower from a different angle. So the exact same flower within moments of each image, and they're quite different. So again, this sort of illustrates how you can, again, move around, try different things, and see what works. And you can decide what you like better and what speaks to you as an image. Okay, so now we've spoken about how to use light or how to interpret light a little bit, composition, and included in that the rule of thirds to help you kind of visualize where you might want to place your subjects in your picture. So now we're going to talk about the still life, and this is where you're going to get a chance to try some of the things or consider some of the things we talked about today. And it's a good time just to practice some things with your camera or your phone or your whatever device you're using, to kind of get familiar even with that if you haven't used it a lot, to learn a little bit about how it works before you venture off and to do other types of photography if you'd like. So I'm going to go back to the image I showed at the beginning as my example of a still life, which is the window and the scale. So again, this was a still life that was just sort of there in front of me. I didn't set it up, but I really liked the way the light came through that window. It very much caught my eye. And now that we've talked about light and composition, perhaps you can look at this image a little differently from the beginning and say, oh, you can see all the lights obviously coming in through the window. I've centered the window, so I have chosen to center that. The scale itself is not centered; it's at the bottom of the image. But I've also not included any of the wall. It's just the deep window well. Again, that was a choice of composition. So you can have a lot of different variables with still life as well as out, doing nature or people or sports or whatever it is that you like to photograph. You'll find lots of different variables in every genre, really. So we're going to show some examples of what you're going to do today with the items that you've gathered to work with. So this first image is an example of a still life I just sort of set up. I grabbed a teacup and some rocks and just sort of put them together just sort of in a different way and sat them in the windowsill. So basically, again, using just a natural light from the window, choosing my composition where the cup is on the left-hand side and the rocks kind of spill out, and in kind of gathering, getting some of the texture in the rock and the colors. I just thought they looked kind of interesting. So then what I did was got a little closer just to see what it would look like, and I zoomed in, just moved in with my camera to the rocks and cutting out most of the cup, but you can still see it there a little bit. Again, just to get a different perspective on it. And then I tried a different image, a different angle, which was sort of the backlighting idea. So I got down beside the cup and took a picture of it from the side. And again, a totally different image. It looks like a completely different image. So it's one of those things where you try some stuff and see what you like and what works with what you're doing, and try as many as you want. So I did another example. So this was just this is a Lego dragon, and I chose him just because he's kind of interesting, lots of color, but I decided to just sort of work with him on his own. Again, so you don't need to have a whole big setup. If you have one thing that you really want to focus on, you can still do this activity with, one piece if you find something that you think is interesting. So again, I shot the dragon from the front, sort of focusing on his face. And then I shot from above, so you can see in this image. I kind of like the way the shadow came, fell beneath him. And so I kind of sort of played with that a little bit just to see what it would look like. And then I shot from the side, so an extreme side view. So again, just these are examples of what you can do with the still life. So you can, again, move around, try different angles, see what you might find something completely different and interesting that you hadn't noticed before on whatever it is you're photographing. And the other setup I did, so this was more themed. So I did like a teapot with the little cups and some dried Labrador tea. And I just set it up on a little wooden tray. So again, different angles. From the top, I took this image from the side. I zoomed in on mostly just the teapot, and there's the suggestion of the other items around it. And then the other view I took was focusing more on the tea in the foreground, and the background gets a little blurry, but you can still see, it's a tea set. So those are just some examples, and basically you could do anything you want with the still life, and that's the beauty of having a digital device to use when you're taking pictures, because you can take as many as you want. You can try many different things. You can play with the light. You can add your own light in. If you have a window and you want to bring a light closer, you can bring different sources of light just to see how it falls on the object. So again, all the stuff that we've talked about, the things you're going to practice, those are things that you can do in any kind of photography that you choose. So whether it's people or nature or animals or still life, if you enjoy that, or like architecture, that kind of stuff, these concepts that we talked about can be used for all of those things. So we're going to set up a still life.
Yeah, we're going to create a still life. Here's an example of backlighting. So it's like we're really dark here. This is not ideal, but just for the sake of what we're doing, this is how we're going to do it. We grabbed a couple of items at random.
A few things.
Just a few things. So, little guy that you just keep playing with. Here's like an old tea canister. This is an item I got from Mexico, like ceramic thing, and here's another ceramic thing that I made in art school many years ago. So it's completely random.
We're just gonna set stuff up.
Yeah.
And then we can move things around too.
Exactly.
We can play with
You're
them
never locked into this is how it's gonna go. And you'll see that we're actually doing it in my windowsill because there's some nice light coming in from here. And going back to what she had said about lighting, and it's an overcast day. It's a very overcast day, so it kind of gives a very sublime sort of light. It's not really harsh or anything, so we thought this would be good. So there's the light coming in from the one side. We're doing it on the shelf, the wood. But if you want to use, like, this is a tablecloth, you want to use a tablecloth or a rag or something, that can give you another thing to think about. But we're not doing that.
We're not doing it. Okay, so I guess we can play a little bit with...
Yeah. You can either play around and move it around how you want to do it, or take some shots and then do some more moving.
And moving around, because the light is kind of a backlighting. Yeah. So, you might want to shoot from some more the side, to get more of the light coming in. Yep.
But play around with it. Try the backlighting. It never hurts to try something in art and fail, because then you learn something from that. You're like, oh, that's what that did. That's what happens, and it didn't work. So I'm gonna reach over and grab this. So even you can see just in video format the different angles, what the light does. Close-ups, she was talking about just focusing on like one little area, or backing up and seeing a bigger part of the scene. The rule of thirds, how you push it around. Do you want to take it?
Sure.
Move around?
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting scene because there's lots of different things in it and different textures, and again, the way the light hits different things and reflects differently. So
one thing to always keep in mind is the fact that you always have a background, whether it's immediately something right there like that shelf, or you can see out my window. So what's in the background? So if you're taking a picture and there's something there, it's going to be part of the picture. So always keeping that in mind.
Yeah, so things to notice so that you're not, at the moment, so that later you're not necessarily surprised.
You're surprised.
Like, there's a guy in the background. Which I didn't
somebody breaking into my house. Oh.
Yeah.
So from there, you can also move things around, try different things. And you don't have to stick with the same items. You can focus just on the one item, bring more items, change things around, move to different spots, get different days are going to have different lighting, like natural lighting. It's just different ways to play. And that is that.
Hopefully you've had an opportunity to pick up some new ideas today, learning about light and composition, and got some ideas for your still life. So have fun with it. Choose your items, set them up any way you want, try different things, and just have fun with it. And remember, again, you can use these ideas out in the world, wherever you go with your phone or your camera or whatever you're using. And keep these ideas in mind when you're taking pictures, and try a few different angles, different things, and you never know what image you might really fall in love with, because sometimes it's a surprise. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. If you're interested in seeing any more of my work, you can find me online at heatherpeden.com. And other than that, have fun taking pictures. Okay.
A big thank you to Heather Peden for sharing all that knowledge with us, walking through photography and just sharing her enthusiasm and love and her talent for doing exactly that. So hopefully that helped you out and you got to explore it a little bit, and you get to take those lessons that she gave you and go on with that. A big thank you to Hannah and all the residents of the cookhouse and the cookhouse itself for having us. It's always a blast. Check out us at cahep.ca, cahep.ca, for everything that we do. Check us out. Of course, it's a YouTube channel, so like, subscribe, follow. That's it. Okay, we'll see you next time. We'll have more. Bye. That was a weird ending.